So hi, I'm Scheila. I am actually not for product or engineering. I actually come originally from marketing and sales. But the thing is, I interview and talk to every day to CTOs, VPs of engineering, and I go for 2,000 people a year. So I have a lot of input. And just so you know, so I am a woman. I'm wearing glasses. I have brown hair at shoulder length. I'm wearing a black T-shirt here. And feel free to ask questions, and I'm happy to answer. So let me tell you a little bit about what do I mean by gringos, right? I have worked with the European market. Lately, I've been much more with the US and Canada. But what I'm seeing is there are patterns to what people are looking for. And hopefully, I can present them to you. And that will help you prepare a little bit better before you have an interview, before you apply for a position. And, it will help you feel a little bit more at ease. So the first thing I want to tell you is the hacks or the ideas that I'm bringing you is not for any job, right? I mean, you can apply in a job site. You can do like short-term projects. What I try to go for is when we're talking about really meaningful jobs. So what does a meaningful job actually look like, right? The idea is if you're really career-driven and you're thinking long-term, first of all, you're looking about a compelling challenge. So let's talk about a company whose mission is something that you're passionate about and you're going to enjoy what you're doing. Or let's talk about something like a very sexy technology that you want to work with and that you want to learn. Or somebody where the peer groups is something that's going to make you really proud. The previous talk, we were talking about you're now at a global stage. So that means that you're opening up to a whole other network of people that, you can be proud to work with and learn from and teach some things as well, right? The second thing about meaningful job is positive culture, right? So some companies will treat a contractor or a foreign worker as a second-class citizen. So those are not the companies you want to be in, right? You want to be in a company that they're going to give you the same opportunities. Of course, there's always a legal framework that was going to restrict some things or others, but that they're giving you the same routines. Are you going to be in the same stand-up meetings? Are you going to be in the same hackathons and training sessions? Are you going to have access to the same resources? Because that's how you continue to evolve after you land the job. And the third thing is is this job actually going to give you relevant opportunities? So, okay, maybe I'm here in the mid-level, but do I have the chance to progress to become a senior? Does this company allow me as a foreign worker to lead the team? Right? So this is interesting for you to look up at the career page of the website, of the company you're applying for, long before you even get there, right? So these are the jobs that I'm trying to help you land. And so let's talk about specifically Brazilian, what are the companies that are hiring in Brazil? It's not every kind of company, right? There's a reason why they come here or Southeast Asia or, Eastern Europe. So let's see what kind of companies. So for the ones, we have companies that are big on innovation. So they're trailblazing, right, where they are at. And these are the ones that are working a lot of blockchain and so on. So they are innovative and they need the talent pool that isn't fully available. Sometimes they run out of good talent in their country. So that's one of the reasons that they expand. The second are these that are really high growth, right? And they want to diversify their teams because they see value in diversity. And I'm talking about, different school systems and these kind of things. And the reason they want to do that is, if their team matches their user base, the chance of them empathizing and building better products is really, really great. And they see value in that. And the last, of course, you have these very heavily regulated companies. And these will usually not hire you directly. They will go through a staff augmentation firm or something like that because they have to comply. So I'm talking about somebody that's stock listed or that works, in finance and health tech, and they have to be very, very aware of user data, for instance. So they want to have a mediator that's going to be supporting you and keep both sides safe, both, the engineer and the company. So what these companies look like. So we have a couple of different maturity levels in the companies and their size, and different companies have different needs in terms of what talent they want, right? So let's talk about a very early stage company. They're bootstrapped. Yeah.
I think your slides
Are not showing? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me see. Well, let's say these slides way better than this face. Let's go. Okay, so let me tell you guys a little bit about what these companies actually look like, right? So if we're talking about someone like really early stage, right? Where are they at, right? First of all, they're proving concept, they're building their MVPs. So usually they don't have a huge team, right? It's going to be like the two founders, a CEO and a CFO, or a CEO and a CTO. So for these companies, usually they want somebody very senior that's going to be their major tech lead to help them make decisions that are going to define the product, define the business, and they will go for a shop, basically like, hey, build an MVP. I don't care how it gets done. I just need it done by X time because I have to test my hypothesis, right? So there are very few positions in these companies, and they're usually for more senior talent. But if you get there, it's a really, really good opportunity to learn about business, right? And use it because you're going to have direct information with direct interaction with the users to see how they're going, how they're evaluating what you're doing. Also, you're going to be very close to C-level. So that's a really, really good opportunity for you to know how funding works and all these things. And that's really valuable if later down the line you're considering either opening your own business or becoming a more leadership position. So that's a really good thing for you to go beyond the technical scope. And then you have these SMBs, so like early stage startups. And here, what happens is they have validated the MVP, right? But they have no idea how that was built because they outsourced it. So now they have to cover, technical debt, or they will have to make that right enhancements because they've already chosen what gives them value or not, right? So here's when they're starting building in-house teams. And usually they're going to do, let's say half and half. So, for the key structures, architecture, and so on, they're going to have their in-house team, but then they're going to go for staff augmentation and contractors. And this is where, when you are a foreign worker, you have a big opportunity of coming into these companies because cost is an issue for them, diversity is an issue for them, and it's things that they want you to have. So what is really good for you as an engineer is like these companies are innovating. They don't have this huge thing that's like very monolithic or something like that, right? They're building something new, a new type of product, a new type of market. So you get to learn a lot of things, both in terms of market information, but also about the tech. You're going to be picking up the stack. You're going to, decide not just the framework, but also everything in terms of, from the collaboration tool, how you're going to document what you're doing. So that's a really good place for us to get in. There's like open doors, and we get to actually make an impact, right? You get to make a lot of decisions, and that's really, really rich. And then last but not least, you have these huge enterprise companies, the IPO companies. And these, here things are a little bit different, right? Um, Now you're talking about like you're not longer managing a fishing boat, you're having a ship, right? So you need to be much more analytical to know, what can I move here not to break something there, right? You have to collaborate with much larger teams. You're much more process based because things have to be documented, and you're thinking not just about the immediate needs, but also about longevity of that product, right? But what's good for you as a technical expert here is this is where you learn how to deal with complexity, which is something really, really good. You also have more resources, right? Because you're already funded, you're already very solid cash flow coming in. So again, depending what motivates you as a person, you get to pick what kind of company you're going to have a bigger chance of, doing well in. So this is something really good. Like, hey, am I excited? Maybe eventually, down the line, I want to build a business. Hey, let me get an early stage and let me build a business with somebody else's money. Great. Um, you know, Choose what works for you. So that's the first thing. And we've been talking in the previous conversations about how the company picks us, but it's really important about how we pick the company, because if you pick the type of company you're applying for, that will increase or decrease your chance of success. So that's the first, key thing for you to know. So let's say you already know what kind of company seems more attractive to you, right? So let's see how they select you and how we make sure it's a really good match. So first of all, have a look at where you're at in terms of your career, right? If you're a junior, and this is really good that we've spoken about, like, hey, it's about building experience. And it's not just about, getting the certification. It's about building your network, right? Come to conferences like this, volunteer. Like, there's tons of NGOs, they need tech projects too. Don't think of it as you being, working for free. Think about you gaining free experience and learning how to negotiate budget, how to prioritize features and these kind of things, right? There's the bad news is there's a limit to how many juniors a company can have, right? In the sense of it's not formal, but in terms of depending on what my roadmap's looking like, if I have to bring someone in and I have to coach them and handhold them, there's only so many I can have before they distract my team from actually making the delivery. So larger companies will probably have a better chance of bringing in juniors, right? If I'm a mid-level, right, here is where, if you're looking for an international career, English is your make or break point, right? And it's okay if you don't have perfect grammar. That's fine. But it's important for you to have a good vocabulary and for you to, paraphrase something. If somebody asks a question, answer back to make sure that you double check and stuff like that, right? Somebody asked before in the other panel, like, hey, what if my English isn't perfect or I'm really awkward and I don't get my idea across? How do I do that? Well, I'm going to tell you that when it comes to interview, my experience with clients is they already value that you're there just for being there. Like, hey, I understand English is not your first language and you're making this amazing effort to be here. You're already standing out from, local candidates because you have the grit. And that's something really, really valuable for you to have. If you're not aware of that, then please let me make you aware of that, right? Learning a second language is hard. And they see that as tenacity. They see that as something valuable. And I have that on video, like for more than one client. So if you guys ever want, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share like them giving testimony to this. And then if you're senior, this is really good, right? You already have more experience under your belt. You have the technical know-how. Most companies usually open positions for hiring seniors. So what are they looking for right now that you know about the business, that you know about ROI, right? So they already know that you're tech savvy, right? You don't have to prove your expertise. They see that in your resume. They see that when they talk to your previous employers or something. But they don't know if you understand the recs coming from the product team. They don't know that you were mindful of how implementing a new feature is gonna impact the customer success team afterwards and support. So if you are aware of these things, you're gonna stand out so much, not just in the recruiting process, but afterward. This is probably what's gonna help you, get a promotion, get a pay bump. This is a way of how you are analytical and associate your task in your role with, the big picture. And last but not least, maybe you're an all-star, right? You were in this like extremely talented person in this very in-demand culture, framework or whatever. Then here the difference is like, hey, be a better human being. Learn how to empathize. Learn how to share knowledge. The better person you are, and we were talking before about building your personality and having different hobbies and bringing in different knowledges, the better chance you have of landing your dream job. Nobody wants to work with someone like 8 hours a day with somebody that you don't like, right? So again, be a better human being. So if we know what they're looking for, what do they dismiss candidates for, right? And I have an amazing talent acquisition team that helps me kind of filter this and map this out. So shout out to them. So technical fit is something that we're often concerned about, but it's not the biggest issue. You can train, you can have certifications, right? But key point though for Brazilians out there is that some things that are very new here, and sometimes we have specific roles for, especially in the US, they are already culture. So for example, if I'm talking about quality, if I'm talking about security, it's expected that everybody in the development life cycle should know that, not just, a specific QA, like everybody should be doing quality assurance at some level within their role. The key things that they're looking for, I would say 2/3 are these two, right? Cultural add and distributed collaboration. What is cultural add? Like I said, a lot of these companies are working with innovation, so they don't want more of the same. They want people that are going to bring different ideas. So for example, let's say that before I became an engineer, I did, law. Great, because if you're working with legal software, you're going to have a perspective on the user that you would not have if you had come straight from computer course, right? So they're looking for these kinds of innovation. Second thing, distributed collaboration. This is where it gets a little bit tougher. A lot of the times, I see people getting dismissed from recruiting processes for very silly things, like not having a proper internet connection or not opening their camera. Like the camera, 60% of what you're communicating is visual. It is this, like the hand gestures and so on. So you have to look not just about the English, but also these extra things like, hey, um, where I'm working from, right? If I'm working with confidential data, I cannot have a call from a public place, right? If I have a poster in my wall, which is something very prejudiced that doesn't match the company values, that's not going to, go down well. So these kind of things come into collaboration, and of course, you have, effective async communication. How do you send something over in Slack? Make sure that's coherent. How you document your code and all these things. That also, again, you're talking about working async with folks. You're talking about also building a legacy over time. So, somebody 3 years down the line will understand what you've done. So this is something really important from day to day. And if they don't catch that in an interview, right, that comes out wrong. So I'm going to give you an example that I've heard from clients before. So sometimes they're going to have a tech test and they're going to give a very bad briefing, right? They're going to send you a ticket and it's going to have incomplete information. And they will rule out that candidate that solved that on their own and went after the information. They are actually gonna the candidate that's going to continue and the process is the one that's going to, hey, answer an email, hop on a call and ask questions and debrief and make sure that they understand that ticket fully and the context and is going to ask. And that's something that they really value in Latin Americans as a whole, but especially in Brazilians. For example, Southeast Asia, and I don't want to sound prejudiced here, but they're very good at, they get a scope and they just execute on what they have been told to do. They're really good at doing stuff. But when they have candidates from Brazil, usually we kind of stress test the idea by asking like, okay, but why am I doing this? And why are we doing this option and not the option? And they see that like something very valuable because you get, if there's a glitch, you catch that before you actually develop it, or you catch that before it actually goes to market. And it's so much better to find something and fix it at concept stage than, when it's in production. So that's something very important when we're talking about collaboration. And I'm just going to try to be mindful of time here, but let me try to bring you a little bit more practical ways of you to do this in a job interview, right? And I actually have the QR code in case you guys want to have these tips over an email later, or follow-up information. You can connect there. But kind of sum it up. The first thing is like find out what moves you and go for it, right? I told you about different types of companies in terms of segments, different maturity levels in the company. But think about it like what moves you in terms of culture to make you fit in with a team. You want to be with a team that it's gonna be, maybe it's really big for you for people to have the same values as you, or maybe it's better one that is going to give you like really good technical expertise, like, hey, I want to be the best in my field, so I'm going to go for the one with like the leader has the best resume, right? Find out. Or I want a really flexible lifestyle and I don't want to have daily stand-up meetings. I want to connect every 10 days or something. Figure that out, because if you have to get out of bed in the morning and invest your time and energy and focus on something, it has to be something that kind of makes your heart beat a little bit faster. The second thing is we were talking before about imposter syndrome. I don't think it's always imposter syndrome. Sometimes it's about humility, and humility is something that really shows your intelligence, right? You can be confident on your knowledge and still kind of hold yourself accountable for the decisions you're making on your day-to-day tasks. So that's something really important, right? The second thing is get your bearings, talk to your community, look at your competitors and so on, because you have to know that, again, nobody wants to work with bad people, right? So keep your technical knowledge in check. See if you're really listening to the person beside you, or if you're, kind of being a little bit arrogant, thinking that your decision or your choices are better than theirs, right? This will help you have better products. And even if you're asking about compensation, right? Sometimes what we were considered senior here in Brazil, when you're in a global scope, it's a mid-level. And maybe you have to, go back in terms of the org chart and, okay, maybe I'm going to change my seniority level so I get to learn and then I get to do better, right? Or even compensation when you're negotiating with us. Maybe you can have something like, hey, when I hit X and Y milestones, that's when I get my pay bumps. So have that flexibility. It will open you much more doors. It's not something like accepting everything, but it's about negotiating and making sure you get kind of a win-win kind of scenario, right? And again, I told you, right? You're interviewing these companies. Remember that, but be coherent of what you're asking of the companies as well, right? If I know that the company is bootstrapped, I'm not going to have a huge compensation because it's just not feasible right now. But maybe I can ask for equity. I don't know. Like there are workarounds that works both ways. And I was like, are you the right person for that job? This is really important because maybe you have the checklist in terms of like the expertises and the certifications, but maybe your drive is not the same. What motivates you for that role is not the right motivation and so on. So it's really important because otherwise you land the job now, but 6 months down the line, it's going to be a terrible breakup. And then, it's going to be bad for you. It's going to be bad for the roadmap. It's going to be bad even in terms of networking, right? Like what kind of experience are you closing doors even after you leave, right? So this is really important. And then, kind of last and not least is regardless of what position you are, think like an entrepreneur, right? And that doesn't mean just looking at the bottom line, right? But it means about empathizing with the other teams, empathizing with the other roles, right? Try to learn a little bit about business, look at what regulations are up, look at what the context is looking like. For example, if we're looking today and we're considering, the US, how many layoffs they have in the beginning of the year, I know they're flooded with engineers. So I know that right now it's a different context than it was 2 years ago when they were, insanely looking for people. Or I know that there's less funding rounds going around in these kind of things, right? So this is really good. And then if I'm in the scenario, okay, then it's about ROI. And then sometimes it's about negotiating or prioritizing the feature that's going to have most impact on the user, right? Let's talk about value. So yeah, these are the things, and how to present in the interview it sometimes very easily, right? If you're that candidate that arrives and you've done the background check in the company, like, okay, oh hey, I saw that you were interviewing me. I looked at your LinkedIn. I saw you like A and B. You're already like halfway in the door. Or the same thing, like I looked at your company's career page. I look at your blog. I saw that you launched X feature. I've looked at your GitHub. Oh, I've worked with similar things before. And there's nothing to do with what you already have done and your experience. It's about how interested you are and how invested you are into actually having this match work, right? So it's a lot about the questions you ask much more than the questions you answer sometimes. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's it. I spoke a lot, but here is my LinkedIn in case you guys still want to continue to talk later. If I can't answer your questions, I definitely can find someone that will. So yeah, that's it.